In this lecture, we are going to discuss what should be the role of the government and what should be the role of the market in a modern society. So before we discuss this, we should know how the role of the government has evolved over time. Now, for this, Mansur Olson has written a very beautiful story on the evolution of the government in a modern society. Mansur Olson says, let us go back to the time period in the history of human civilization where the humans started living on the sea shores, basically on the river sides, wherever there is water, and then we are talking about the time period of settled agriculture when the people stopped roaming around here and there and started living on the near to the water bodies or on the river sides so that they can do settle agriculture. And when they were doing agriculture, there was no such law and order, and then some people who were honest would do hard work and do the crop, and some people who were powerful would not do any such activities, and rather they will be involved in looting the crop of the others. And that's how we see that some people are doing crops, and then some people are busy in looting the crop of others. So the honest farmers should get say half of the crop that they should actually get ideally, and because the 50% of the crop would be lost to say the wildlife, and then also the roving bandits who are involved in looting the crop of the people who are doing honest crop. So now through this actually what happens, the honest farmers get only 50% of the crop, and so the honest farmers who are quite feeling frustrated that we are not getting our harvest. Now the roving bandits, out of all the roving bandits, one roving bandits comes to the farmers who are honest and then saying that, see, now instead of looting the crop of yours, I will rather protect your crop from the other bandits, and then in exchange of that you should give me some percentage of your crop. So then the people actually who are doing farming were quite impressed on the deal basically given proposed by the roving bandit, one of the roving bandits, because they thought that at least now we will get some more crops, and then we can give some crop to this bandit actually who is going to protect our crop. So that's how we see that now the roving bandit, one of the roving bandits, now settles down with the people who are doing the crop, and so he protected the crop from the other roving bandits, and that's how the farmers could get the 100% of the crop. And now when they got the harvest, now they are happy to share some part of the crop with the roving bandit who was settled down with them. So now the bandit is happy because he gets a percentage of the crop from the farmers, and the farmers are also happy because they are now getting their harvest. The yield actually has been now maximized. So this is actually somehow we can say that this is the idea of the government actually how it has evolved. So now the present government actually is trying to protect us from the external aggression, and in exchange the people of the country are paying some amount of tax to the government. So this is how the bandit idea actually applies to the government. That is how given by Mansur Olson. Now you can extend this story a little further. We can say that no, it's not that the government is only involved in the external aggression. In fact, when the bandit actually settle down with the people, gradually when there will be fighting among the people in one group, then the powerful person, the bandit, actually it helps them in settling down the disputes. So basically that is what is law and order, the police function of the government. And similarly, gradually there would be also disputes on the crop yield and how that will be distributed among the people, and who should do cultivation where. So then again that is basically the property right argument, that the bandit is helping the people to settle down the disputes on the property right thing. So basically maintaining or respecting the property right is another function. So we can say that this is how the three classical functions of the government has evolved. So one is the protection from external aggression, then the second one is maintaining law and order within the boundary, and then third one is respecting the property right of the people. And these are classical functions. And we can say, if you see the Adam Smith's idea, or say all the classical economist idea, then all people argue that government should play the minimalist role, and market actually is smart enough to do everything. So that's how government actually was confined only to three activities, and the market could do everything else. But this idea actually got a shock, major shock, during 1929, when the world faced the Great Depression. Because when the world faced Great Depression, what happened is that the idea that the market can take care of itself actually was not actually observed in the market, and we saw that the market basically lacked the aggregate demand, and then the people were actually losing jobs, and then because there was not enough demand, so aggregate supply was greater than the aggregate demand, and since aggregate demand was falling short, no production happened, people lost job and employment were falling, so many people actually were starving, and then some people were also dying without food and income. And then the hero emerges actually, that is John Maynard Keynes. He says that market actually will not be able to recover without the help of the external agent, that is government. And that's how he says that basically the government has to come forward actually to rescue the market to come up, and there actually comes the role of the stabilization. So as per the recommendation of the Keynes, we saw that basically when there was a Great Depression in 1929, and it continued almost for 4 or 5 years or even more than that, basically the Keynes recommended that, John Maynard Keynes recommended that government should basically start investing money so that the employment actually is generated, the aggregate demand is revived, and then output again is increased. So then within stabilization function there are three actually functions. One is stabilization of the output, that we can say GDP, or the output of the state or the national economy, and then comes the stabilization of the employment. That means people should know that there should be stability in the employment, no more employment, no more unemployment, so at least a fraction of the people, everyone should actually get employment, decent employment. And the third one is the stabilization of the prices. There should not be very high rate of employment, prices or low prices, or prices should not fluctuate too much. There should be stability in the inflation rates. So that's how now one more function is added, that is stabilization function, and that comes during 1930s. And that's how we say that stabilization of output, prices and employment. And that's how the 30s time period goes, and then comes the Second World War. And after the Second World War, what happens, most of the countries were required to take up the reconstruction activities, because the market cannot reconstruct the world. So that's how the countries actually, the governments started actually doing the reconstruction activities in different parts of the world. And then we also see that during that time, like mid-30s and 50s, early 50s, many nations across the world were getting independence, and the modern nations were mostly democratic nations, and these are also called as the welfare nations. So when we say welfare nation, actually then the responsibility of the government increases. It goes beyond the traditional functions or the stabilization functions or the reconstruction activities. It has to do with so many other things. And so that's how the role of the welfare nation actually idea gets popularity during late 30s and 50s. And that time also we see that the communist countries actually were also in the peak of the glory, and we see the USSR, and then we see many other communist countries were really flourishing, and that's why we see the Cold War, a communist country challenging the capitalist economy like America in case of prosperity actually. So that's how, since the communist idea was actually popularized, we see that the centralized planning concept was also popular, and then we also see in India how Nehru actually adopts the central planning in case of India. So that means government actually takes over many things, and then government tries to play a major role in basically the newly independent economies, and that's how role of the government actually we see usually is very high, and the government started nationalizing many things which were earlier owned by the market. Similarly, again deriving from the classic the Marxist idea of redistribution, that the wealth should not be concentrated with a few people, and it should be equally distributed among all, so that everyone gets equal opportunity actually to realize his or her potential. That's how we see in countries like India, we see the land reforms actually happening, and so that is basically redistribution of the wealth from the rich to the poor. Similarly, imposition of taxes, you tax the rich people and transfer the subsidies to the poor people. And similarly, India also started giving reservations so that the people who are in the vulnerable group, who are deprived, also get opportunity to participate in many spheres, particularly in the government jobs. So that's how we see that the role of the government was basically extended to the planning, and then we see that in the name of welfare nation, government takes up many things and it nationalizes many sectors, and then it also goes for redistribution of the wealth through the land distribution, and then income taxes, transferring resources to the poor people, and then again we also see that redistribution policy, basically the reservation policy, was implemented in countries like India. And then so that's how the responsibility of the government actually grows during 60s and 70s. And then we see that the government's presence is everywhere. In India, we see the banks were nationalized, coal mines were nationalized, many mining projects were nationalized. Government started taking up many things. So that's the role of the government actually increases. And then government was also doing initial perfect, making a lot of profit. But then we also see that the government gets into the domains which could have actually done by the market, and basically the next responsibility that actually should actually government do is basically the provision of the public goods. When you say public good, actually basically it has two characteristics, that it is non-excludable and it is non-rival in nature. That means even if somebody does not pay for something, it gets the benefit, and no one can stop the person who has not paid anything to avail the services. That is basically called as non-excludable. You can't exclude a person even if he or she has not paid for availing the service. That is non-excludable characteristics. And the best example is national defense. Even if somebody has not paid tax, he is protected by the country. So that is one. And then similarly you can see availing the those are some services, working on the national highways. So these are basically the large public goods. If somebody doesn't pay for it, also gets the benefit. Then comes the private good. When we say private good, actually it is basically excludable and rival in nature. That means if you don't pay for it, you will not get the benefit. Take the example of rasgulla. If you do not pay, say 10 rupees, no one will give you one rasgulla to eat. So that is excludable characteristics of a private good. Then comes rival. That private good is rival in nature. That so the rival nature says that if somebody has consumed X quantity, then the quantity available for other people is say n minus X. If n is the total quantity available in the market of some particular commodity, then if somebody has consumed quantity X, then other people can only consume n minus X. So that is rival in nature. But in case of public good, everyone enjoys equal quantity of public goods. For example, national defense, everyone is protected equal amount. If Mr. X gets protection, some quantity, it's not the other person actually gets less quantity of protection. So the public good has basically two characteristics. One is that it is non-excludable and it is non-rival in nature. But in case of private good, it is excludable and it is rival in nature. Then the other category of commodity is basically merit good. And when you say merit good, we basically refer to the commodities like health, education, and all that. So the name basically says that there is merit behind the public provision of these goods, because if you allow the market to operate, then they will not actually provide to the optimal quantity, so government should provide this. Now the characteristic of a merit good is that these are sometimes excludable in nature, but these are non-rival. Okay, so excludable means, say for example, vaccination, you are vaccinating the people in only certain age groups. For example, children are vaccinated, not all the population is vaccinated. Similarly, sometimes you can do a targeted vaccination, or you can provide some benefits to a targeted group. So that's how there is a merit behind actually the provision of this good, and this could be excludable in nature. But once you are in the group, you are enjoying the benefit equally. And in fact, education is sometimes, education is a merit good. And the best example would be that, when you are sitting in the classroom, suppose somebody has got education, they got a seat in Niger, then that means the people, suppose 65,000 students apply to Niger, and out of that only 200 students will avail the seat in Niger, and that means only 200 students actually got the benefit. Other students actually, all 4,800 students are excluded from Niger. So that is excludable nature. But once you are within Niger, you get the equal teaching actually. So whoever sits in the class is taught equally among equally actually. So merit goods are excludable in nature, but these are non-rival. And so if you allow the market to operate, then market will provide only education or health to only limited groups. So suppose look at say polio vaccine program. If vaccine is not given to all, then what will happen is that only the people who have even got the vaccine are at risk, because if some people do not take the vaccine, then they will impose risk to the people who are even vaccinated. So that's how the risk actually comes, and then that's why there should be universal supply of these goods. Public goods which are non-excludable, non-rival, and merit goods should be provided by the government, and private goods like say steel, rasgulla, or anything that if you pay it, only you avail the service, then that can be provided by the market. So we can argue that in the public economics literature it is argued that the government should provide all the public goods. Okay? And wherever it is in the public goods, market will fail to provide in the optimal manner or in the optimal quantity. That's the government should provide the public goods and the merit goods, and private goods can be left to the market for the provision. And then comes basically, so that is basically during 1970s we see that nationalization is happening, and then government has acquired so much of power, and then we are talking about the provision of the public goods by the government. And so we see a lot of government actually is doing a lot of things during 1970s and 80s. And then when government does so many things at a time, it is also at risk to fail. And that's what exactly has happened. Actually, when government provides everything, government started producing steel, government started producing coal, government started producing cloth, government started producing food, and so on. Everything is done by the government or managed by the government. So there we see that basically government actually started failing in different sectors, and that's how when government actually started failing in certain sectors, then people started criticizing that government can also fail. Just like we discussed that during 1920s, 29, 30, during the Great Depression, it was realized that the market fails. That's what government has to help the government market to come up. Now during 1980s, now the narrative has changed, and people are saying that that government can equal fail, and because government is doing so many things which it should not do. It can leave it to the market actually for the production. So the idea of the government failure actually again gets popularity during 1980s, and then during 1980s we also observe China has adopted the reform. 1978 China has adopted the reform. That's a communist country. Similarly, USSR is on the verge of collapse, and we see the fall of the Germany Berlin Wall in early 90s. So basically late 80s and 90s, we see the glory of the communist countries are fading away, and we see that basically the market is now market idea is getting popularity, and then government is failing in different sectors. So that's how when the government felling idea actually is getting popularity during 1980s, then basically the economists started arguing, basically the new classical economists actually started arguing that government should withdraw from many sectors and we can leave the market to take up all those activities. And that's what we see in India. We adopted the reform in late 80s, and in 1991 to be precise, the new economic policy was implemented. Similar around the world actually we see that the market-led economy's idea was getting popularity. That privatization, globalization, and disinvestment, selling away the public basically public sector undertakings. So that's what that was happening during 1990s or late 80s. So then what happens that when you allow the market to operate and provide many goods and services, you have to regulate the market, because if you allow the market on its own to operate, it may actually behave in a monopoly manner, which may reduce the welfare of the people. So then the idea is coming that, okay, allow the market to operate, but then you have to regulate. So the regulation function now gets popularity here during 90s. And then government sets up different regulators. Say in India we have telecom regulators, we have share market regulators, we have insurance market regulators, we have Competition Commission of India to see that no company is establishing monopoly power. So in different sectors we see actually different regulators coming up. Similarly, in some sectors the idea of PPP, public-private partnership, actually coming up, again getting popularity. So that's how which is that the regulation function actually of the government is again getting strengthened in the new economy. So that's how we see that the role of the government has evolved actually from the very minimalist role, that is the defense service, that is protecting the country from external aggression, then maintaining law and order, that is police service, and then respecting the property right or ensuring the property right of the individuals. It could be intellectual property right, it could be land right, it could be anything. So those are the classical functions. Then we saw the stabilization function was added, that is basically establishment of the output, employment, and the prices. So inflation control, GDP growth, and ensuring least amount of unemployment. Those are the functions added during 1929 and 30s. Then during the Second World War and during 30s and 50s, we see that the reconstruction role of the government, then the idea of welfare nation getting popularity, and also government nationalizing many things, many sectors, and taking up all the sectors. Then the idea of redistribution comes up, redistributing wealth, so that you have an egalitarian society in the world because of the communist idea. And similarly, we see the centralized planning by the government in different countries in the world, and then we see redistribution and the implementation of reservation policies and imposing taxes for achieving egalitarian society, so that you impose tax on the rich people and transfer the benefit to the poor people. So that was happening during a lot of active roles of government were added, and then that was the time period 60s and 70s, and then during 80s again we see that the idea of market government actually again gets popularity because government started failing in different sectors. And then we are allowing the market actually to come up during late 80s and 90s, and the role of government is now again falling. Now there we say that, okay, if we are allowing the market to operate, then government should provide the public goods and merit goods, and market can provide the private goods. So, but when you allow the market to operate, it can behave in a monopoly manner. That's how you should regulate the market. And that's how government regulation comes over in different sectors, different regulatory agencies which are created, different regulatory authorities are created, and so that's how that is the regulation function of the government comes. And then comes nowadays we see for the environmental protection also we see the environmental regulations that will come up, all come up, and then so that's how in the regulation actually you can see different activities actually are there for the government. And then in some sectors also we see that it's not that only it is government versus private, it is usually government and private also they come up together, that is basically public-private partnership. So if you have to now conclude actually saying that what should government do and what should private market do, then you can say that government should do all the classical roles, defense, police, ensuring property right, then the stabilization function it has to do, and then it has to provide all the public goods like health, education should be provided by the government only, so that it can minimize the inequality in society, and then we can allow the market to provide all the private goods, and because it will have a lot of efficiency in providing the private goods, and government can impose taxes on the private sector, and that can be used for providing public goods in the best possible manner, and then it can allow basically it should regulate the private sector because it should not get into a monopolistic nature. So similarly, some sectors there could be public-private partnership, wherever there is a risk of the private sector not coming out forward. So there, as the government has to provide a helping hand to the private sector initially at least. And economists like Professor Prabhat Patnaik who say that government should ensure 5 justiciable fundamental economic rights to every citizen, and those would be ensuring food security to all people, providing quality and free education. It's starting from primary to higher education. So quality education, free and quality education, then free and quality healthcare, and then right to employment. Every citizen should get right to employment, and old age for pension. So one is food security, then we have free and quality healthcare, free and quality education, and then we get right to employment, and we get right to old age security. So this should be ensured by the government, and then we can allow the private sector to provide all the private goods, and government can regulate those sectors and can collect the taxes, and it can transfer the benefits to the rich people. So this is what these are basically the role of the government in a modern society. And so when we are debating actually that what should government do and what should not government do, actually we should look at these responsibilities of the government. Thank you very much.